Good morning, everyone. We are going to be going through some of the district documents as a preparation for our District 5 board meeting. As we go into the board meeting weekend, we find that there's all different levels of understanding of how our different documents work and what they're for and where to find them and so forth, and a number of ones that we're going to be updating at this weekend's meeting. So I thought it might be easier, and as we discussed on our executive committee call last Saturday, to review them with the board. So I'm going to share my screen and we are going to go through a number of the items. So we're going to start out with what our main governing document is, which is the District 5 bylaws. These are revised only by the district lodge members. So those, when we refer to district lodge members, those are the delegates who are serving at the district lodge meeting, which is a part of the district convention. And just a review on that, the district convention is the event that happens. It involves the workshops and the banquets and the meals, and if there's tours or classes and so forth. The district lodge meeting is the official business part of that time together. And so that's when the work of the district is being done, the committee work, the delegates that are meeting, the discussion of resolutions and bylaws, the election of district board and alternates and international delegates and so forth. So, so it's only at that, by that governing group of people that, that those documents, this document can be updated and so forth. In the event that during a time between one district lodge meeting and the next, if there's issues that come up that the bylaws need to be revised or updated, or a proposal is being put forth, we go back to that group of people who served as delegates at the preceding district lodge meeting because they serve until the next group is seated. So for example, during this time of COVID, the people who served as delegates in 2018 in La Crosse will continue to be our district lodge meeting and delegates that we go back to until June of 2022 when we meet again. So this is our governing document, and as we've looked at some zone realignment, I've had a number of emails from people saying, well, you know, these lodges have closed, or we've added a lodge, and I don't see that in the bylaws. I can't change it until the district lodge members vote to update that. So after this weekend's board meeting, we'll have one bylaw proposal for sure, just to clean up. We've had 3 lodges that have closed in the last 2 years and one that's been added. And so regardless of what happens with the zone alignment recommendation, I'm envisioning that one bylaw proposal will go out to those 2018 delegates for action. So, so bylaws are organized by articles, so our official name and the territory, how our meetings, how we elect delegates, how many delegates each lodge gets are in here, the credentials and traveling expenses, bonding. The zones, this is the one that needs some updating. We've had 3 lodges that have closed, as I mentioned, and one that's been added. But again, I won't be changing those until we have action by the district lodge meetings. The salaries are set in here, the different officer positions and the order that they're elected. This is a critical part, paragraph 3, especially when we had some vacancies on the board. So as we were looking at possibly having to go back to the district lodge members for someone to step forward, that could have made a difference in how things are done and you know, and so forth. So I refer to these quite a bit. I know President Johnson does as well. How we elect our representatives and alternates to the international meeting and so forth is in here. Fees and dues are a part of it, fraternal project, and then how they're changed. So again, these are the bylaws that were approved in June of 2018. We had just some grammar cleanup that had to be done in 2020 or in October 20. So, and usually what happens is once we get through not that any major things were done, but just the board reviews them and does the approval and so forth. So anyway, so those are the bylaws. So next document is one that seems to be a little bit more confusing for our board members. This is our policies and practices, and I have some parts that as the committee reports are coming in, I'm starting to make what their proposed changes are and so on. Policies and practices is basically an internal document of the board. It's not a secret document. We don't put it on the district website because predominantly it's used by the board members. So, it was given to the new board members at the reorganization meeting, and then in the fall, following a district lodge meeting and convention, we always update it for the biennium. And if there are changes that need to be made during that biennium, the board has the ability to change all the parts of the document except for the bylaws, which I include in there. So that part they can't change, but the other parts. So that's what we're asking committees to come back with and so forth. But it lists who our current board are and the alternates and administrators and some of our official places so that it's kind of all in one place. We also do the district directory that comes out in January that has, some of this information. But again, this is more of a board document and one that if you keep it handy, I think you'll have a lot of questions answered and so forth. The lodge assignments as they currently are, the committees as they currently are, and then we go through the various parts. So we've had board members ask, well, where are job descriptions and where does it say what I should be doing? A lot of that is found in the policies and practices and in the zone meeting documents. And so it starts out, listing the board of directors and the officers and compensation that was approved at the district lodge meeting. It goes through our board of directors meeting procedures. There's been some changes from the international. They've gone back to the 2018 delegates who served up in Minneapolis a number of times, I think 5 times on different proposals, especially dealing with COVID. So some of this can be changed as well. Our committees and what their basic responsibilities are outlined. And so this is the list that President Johnson used to plug members in and if people wanted to be on certain committees and so forth. The reimbursement part is on here for the board as far as their travel and meals and lodging and so forth. And then we have for the district lodge meetings, again, that's the business meeting at the convention. So don't confuse that with district board meeting. So a board meeting is what we're doing this weekend. A district lodge meeting is what happens at the convention. So it has some of the criteria that we give to lodges that might be looking to submit a proposal to host the district lodge meeting. Some of the things that they think about, the district dues, and a lot of that, this part, had changed due to the new due structure and so forth. So trying to keep all the documents up to date is always a challenge. So that's why it's a team effort, and that's why you're all reviewing it before this meeting. And then we talk about the zone activities. So again, these are some of the responsibilities of the zone directors for, conducting activities during the year and what costs are covered and so forth. Publicity is the next part, and so this goes into some of the responsibilities of the publicity director. Fraternal is our youth project, and I'm not quite always sure how that wording got to be because our fraternal ones are typically our youth projects and scholarships and so forth. And then District 5, Masamora is a huge part of that. So it covers that. It covers our grants and scholarships, sporting things at Masamoro. And then recreation, we are starting to see some changes coming in. I've got a few changes that I put in from some of the committee reports and so forth. And then the cultural activities, and I know they've got some additions, adding the Viking chest, which hadn't been added to some of their responsibilities and so forth. The scholarship program and how that works, and some of the basic outlines with that, and with the Siwitrak and Olaf Ida one. Then we have the gifts and memorials. There are some King Olaf medallions that are part of the transition between the officers and so forth, the district president, vice president, and secretary each have a numbered King Olaf medallion. And then we also have the King Harald medallion that the treasurer has. And kind of the background on the gavel, and if we're selling things, talks about the use of the Sons in Our Way emblem, that how we can change the policies and excuse me, practices book, and so forth. And then I've got the bylaws in there. So again, this document is a working document of the board. So if changes need to be made, we can make them, but it's something that is a really good overview and a good guideline for our board members to be following and so forth. The next one that we have is Fraternal Gives. This is a volunteer hours reporting system that Sons in Our Way has. On the district level, I submit all the hours on the Fraternal Gives website, and this includes all district activities. So all meetings, events, committee meetings, convention related time and planning, district lodge meetings, your visits, officer work, director work, travel, any district activities. So there, I have a screenshot of what I actually have to fill out. So I have that form that I asked you guys to use because I need the information on the form. If not, I'm either trying to look it up or I'm trying to find out what city you had that in, and so forth, because I try to enter it as accurately as I can. Again, for the district activities, for example, for our youth director, when they do Masamoro, that includes all the volunteer hours, all the time put in by all the, the volunteers that we have there, anyone who's planning that and so forth. When we look at Barnaburkey, the overall event encompasses all the volunteer hours. That includes the cookie baking. So we kind of estimate how many dozen cookies come, and if 3/4 of them are homemade ones, about how much time it takes to bake a dozen cookies to kind of do that estimate. Sometimes I'm sure that some of the lodges are also recording those hours. Technically, it's the district that's supposed to be recording those. Same thing for a district lodge meeting. Many times lodges will ask, well, do we count all the hours that our delegates spent going to the convention and district lodge meeting? And no, it's actually a district reporting that I do, but I don't lose sleep about it. I'm not aware that there's any Fraternal Gives police out there, and I have a feeling that most lodges underreport their hours. So I try to do my best to make sure all the district hours are recorded for all the activities and what the board members give me for your activities. And knowing that probably some of the lodges aren't reporting in full what they should be reporting. I think where we sometimes lose hours that aren't reported accurately are in the preparation time. When I look at even our local lodge officer meetings, I spend probably 5 to 8 hours of preparation for those, that business meeting, or what we used to call our officers meeting. I know our treasurer and other financial people do. I know our secretary does in the minutes, committees that are doing their reports and so forth. There's a lot of hours that go into preparation for that 2-hour meeting. And so that's all part of that. So that's an important part of that. So then when we go to the tracking, this is what I'm asking you to send in to me, because again, these 8 items are what I need to have: the activity, the city and state it was done in, the date of it, if it was a donation, a member activity, or service project, or community service. So excuse me, typically we don't have the donation part. That would be if we're just writing a check out to something. But the member activity is where we are doing the bulk of the Sons in Our Way work and business. So all your committee meetings and board meetings and projects that you're working on and so forth. If it's a community service project, I'll use a local lodge example. It's easier. If you're hosting the blood drive, if we're collecting coats for kids right now for our lodge, those are community service hours. So probably 95% of what we do goes under member activity. And if you aren't sure, I can, make that designation too. How many members attended, how many non-members attended, and then how many volunteers. And oftentimes, and it should be that the volunteer hours and number of volunteers is different than the number of members. When you look at let's say it's a zone meeting, and you've got 50 people that came, but it's that local lodge that's hosting it. So let's say there's 10 people there out of the 50, and the two zone directors, and they invited two other people from the board. 14 would be your volunteers. So then you look at how many hours it took that local lodge to, to set things up or to make the meal and clean up afterwards and so on. How many hours did the zone directors put into that, as far as promoting it and getting people to come and doing the agenda and preparing the handouts and so forth, and those other two district officers that might have come to help present, their preparation time, their travel time, and everyone's travel time. So again, that will really, it helps to more accurately report the number of volunteer hours, because that's all part of going to an activity. And the way Fraternal Gives works is those hours are then compiled by the International for both the districts and the local lodges. And then that is what's used when they're, reporting on the national level. And also when there's questions about why should Sons of Norway be tax exempt, why do they get some benefits from that, and they can go back and say, well, we have so many different events, we have so many volunteers, they're putting in so many hours that are helping to improve our communities and so forth. So that's the Fraternal Gives part. The visitation reports, and we have two versions of it right now. This is what is our usual one, where if you're going to a lodge or visiting that lodge, and you're going to a meeting, you're going to an event and so forth, there's some basic questions that Andy has put on this report, checking which programs were discussed. It's always interesting, and I get a copy of these when Andy gets done with them, just to see what lodges are covering at their meetings and how they're running their programs and so forth, your comments about the meeting, and then that gets sent along with your expense report to Andy. And then he's been sharing those with me. If I think our vice president might be requesting to get a copy of those, because it really gives us an idea about what's happening in that lodge, and if there's any issues that you've commented on, or if they need some assistance with something or something like that. We also have a modified, I gotta find it here, the COVID one. So during the time of COVID, the upper part is the same, but if that meeting was virtual, what platform are they using? Did you assist them in setting up the meeting? Do they record them? And was it an officers meeting? Was it a lodge meeting? And just observations and so forth about it. And so those are just some minor modifications. Obviously, some of this upper part may or may not happen. There's some who are still doing their anthems, or some that are doing an outside, picnic and so forth during COVID, or they've made some modifications, but they certainly would be covering, some of the programs and other parts. So just some simple modifications on that form, as well as with our expense forms then, and I'm going to go to a little bit reduced view on this so we can see the whole thing. So with the expense reports, these are submitted to Andy first. They go to our district president. You put your director's name in, your home address, date of the report, what zone you are, or if you're an officer position. The first part is for director travel and visitation, when you're going to lodges for events or meetings, or to present things and so forth. The date, the name and number of the lodge that you visited, where it was located, you plug in the mileage, and then the purpose of the visit. The next part is when you're going to a district board meeting, or in those even years when you're going to a district lodge meeting. So this is where that section is reported. So right now our rate is 43 cents per mile. We made a change a few years ago, excuse me. And our district rate is based on 75% of the IRS rate, which I think is the same as what the international uses and so forth, or something like that. And so if you're staying in a hotel and so forth, the rates usually at the board meetings will say these are the approved expenses. Of if we have everyone staying at the hotel gives us what that rate is. And if you've made any upgrades or you have room service or something, you can work with on that depending on how it is. With the meals and your tolls and so forth, mileage, those are all reported on this form. And then there's totals in those columns. So if you download the form, you can fill it in, and Mike's got it set up for a lot of autofill. So once you plug in the initial expense, it'll add up the columns and so forth. The next part is one that I use quite a bit, the other director expenses. This is where I put my printing and if I'm doing mailings or I'm buying some supplies or something like that. I put it in there, postage and phone, related expenses and so forth. The key on this thing is to sign it. So if you don't sign it when you send it to Andy, he's going to send it back to you. So make sure you sign it, and you do need to attach all your receipts and so forth. So make sure that it's complete. Again, it goes to Andy first. Once Andy has approved it, he either scans it or sends it. I'm not sure what their process is. That Andy gets it to Mike, and Mike will send the check. So a lot of times what I'll do is before I send it, I just make a copy of the expense report. So I still have my copy there. And that way, just in case something happens with the mail or something, and you haven't gotten a check in a timely basis, usually a week or two, you can touch base. And if for some reason it's lost in the shuffle or something, you still have a copy that you could scan. And, I usually don't make copies of my receipts and so on, but I haven't had a problem in it not getting there. So anyway, let's hope that things continue to go with the mail. So the last kind of documents that I want to go through today are the zone meeting compiled packet, and then we have a COVID version as well. And so this is for when you're having zone meetings or events. Some of our zones, for example, in Zone 3, we have a pretty regimented schedule. I think all the years I've been in Sons in ROA, we haven't had a Zone 3 meeting. Ours are typically the actual meeting part in the winter, and then we do a picnic in the summer or some type of gathering. And so again, I kind of grabbed what was in policies and practices for the zone activity part. Logistics, this has changed over the years. Years and years ago, we called them officer seminars, and only the officers could go, and the district only reimbursed for officers that went, and that's changed a lot. We've had lots of modifications in this as lodges have asked for some changes and for different things to be covered. They can be held in a variety of places. It might be at a lodge building, at a restaurant, at a church, some kind of meeting space, a destination. Some are combined with tours, and then they have a meeting time or some type of presentation or whatever it might be. I know Zone 1 has done some in conjunction with Barnaburkey. I think that's more of an update at those meetings and not going into a lot of training and so forth. They're held whenever it works best. We have always had our Zone 3 one in the years of a district lodge meeting. We usually have it in January before people are electing their delegates. So we can talk about what's happening in our zone and if we're looking for new zone directors, because that's a critical part of that part. And kind of go from there. So who's invited? Again, it used to be only officers and so on, but and we still kind of list that, but still any members who are interested, your potential leaders and so forth, are certainly welcome to come. There is an attendance sheet, so in a report form. The report form just helps us. I keep these once Andy gets done with them, and and basically it shows what lodges are participating, in it, and what your costs for that meeting are. You still fill out the expense report to get reimbursed for your costs, but it really helps to, I think it helps the treasurer, first of all, to make sure those expenses are getting to the right place. And then secondly, it gives us an overview of what happened at that meeting and so forth. And then there's an attendance sign-in sheet as well. And then our next one is the COVID packet and so forth for zone meetings. So basically, I just made some modifications. I know some of you, I have been, some have held a zone meeting virtually, some have talked about it, and I think we're going to be spending some time this weekend talking about that. And so that's a critical part as well. So those are some of the documents. One document I forgot to put on my list, and I just have to see if I can find it quick. And I think I can, is the nominating committee guidelines packet. And this is something that comes out from the international, something that we follow in our work in trying to, I'm going to see if it opens for us, in electing our working to elect our board and alternates and international board member and so forth. So this is also part of our process. There was an email last night asking about, let's see, here we go. So these are the guidelines that we're following. I'm not aware that they've made any changes on these. Our nominating committee is supposed to be elected at the spring meeting of the year preceding the district lodge meeting. So in April, or the spring meeting of 2021, that's when we'll elect our nominating committee. So these are the guidelines that'll be followed for that. And the document itself kind of goes in, this is for international officers and district officers and board members and so forth that we're looking at. In some cases for international, that they're looking for, some pretty detailed information. They do financial disclosure, conflict of interest, employment history, fingerprinting, because they are basically a governing board over the insurance, part of it and so forth. And so it goes through the process of getting that nominating committee for the international director. They're elected for 4 years. So we were on an off year for that. And I actually need to get clarification. I'm not sure if Robin Fossum's term will still expire in 2022 or if they are just added 2 more years on like the district boards were. So I'm not quite sure how that works and so forth, but you have to have no fewer than 3 people. Typically our nominating committee does both the international director if we're looking for one, as well as the district board members and so forth. And so it talks about that international director and or someone who's interested in running for an office and so forth. And then on non-election years, again, it talks about the district that we're supposed to be electing them in that March, April, May of the non-election year. So that's the odd years and so forth are the easiest ways. And then again, the international nominating committee, who can be on it? They don't want more than 1 people per zone, and obviously nobody running for an office. It kind of goes through a really nice timeline of how that all works and so forth, and how they're supposed to report and skill sets of the people that we're looking for, and that should be on the committee and so forth. So it's a nice document. They've got the current application for the international, person, as well as they should have at the end, the one for district candidates. So whether you're running for a director. So every district lodge meeting, whether you've been on the board, like I've been on the board quite a few years, I still have to fill it out. So that's something that once our nominating committee is elected next spring, and they start their work, I'm guessing we'll have an updated document from the international with all the dates correct and so forth, and then they'll start their work on that. So anyway, so that is the nuts and bolts of official documents of our district. So there's a lot of them. And what my plan is this year, because it seems like things get lost via email. So, a lot of times, we'll have people who say, well, you don't need to print and send everything out, but I really think we need to. And so once we get through this board meeting and we have updated the policies and practices and just reviewed all these reports and so forth, I'll get these updated and printed and sent so that all the board members have a hard copy for their binder or however they organize their materials and so forth. So anyway, so thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to being together this Friday afternoon and all day Saturday, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.